This video was brought to you by Brilliant. The return of US President Donald Trump to the White House was initially celebrated as a victory for Europe's right-wing populists, who believed that having an ally in the Oval Office would bolster their influence within the EU. However, Trump's antagonistic stance towards the US's traditional European allies, his failure to quickly end the war in Ukraine, and his escalation of a full-blown trade war with Europe have forced many European right-wingers to awkwardly distance themselves from the president. So in this video, we'll explore how Trump has complicated matters for Europe's right-wing populists, and why, despite this, it looks like Europe is still moving right. Everyone talks about the left and right of politics, but in Europe there's something new emerging, a new right. In the latest issue of our magazine, we explain this new phenomena and run through some of the elections the new right have been winning. Read more by clicking the link in the description. First, let's start with some context looking at the right's recent surge. During last summer's European elections, despite the fact that the mainstream centre-right bloc managed to consolidate their grip on power, more radical right-wing parties also made serious inroads. In France, Marine Le Pen's National Rally won the popular vote with 31.5%, its best ever result in a nationwide vote. In Italy, Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy party got 28% of the vote. In Germany, the Alternative for Deutschland party celebrated a historic second-place finish, pushing the former Chancellor's Socialist Party into third place, before they went on to achieve their best ever result at this year's federal election too. Similarly, in the Netherlands, Geert Wilders' far-right party came second behind the Green Left Alliance, while in Austria, the far-right Freedom Party came out on top, with 25.7%, and then went on to come first in the national elections just a couple of months later. All in all, currently 6 EU member states, Croatia, Finland, Hungary, Italy, the Netherlands and Slovakia, now have parties often described as right-wing populists, either leading their government or in coalition. Anyway, during last year's US presidential election, a lot of these politicians rushed to ally themselves with Trump, hoping that this would both give them more sway on the global stage and boost their popularity with their own electorate. However, this isn't exactly how things have played out, and Trump's extreme politics and antagonistic attitude towards the US's closest allies has left right-wing populists struggling to respond. As a consequence of Trump's bullying of Denmark over Greenland, tariff war with the EU, and tilt towards Moscow, Trump's popularity among Europeans has plummeted. According to a recent survey, more than half of Europeans now consider Trump to be an enemy of Europe, with only 9% saying they see him as a friend of Europe. And the recently published Democracy Perception Index has shown that America's image has declined sharply in Europe. And this has made things difficult for the pro-Trump right, and triggered a surge in support for centre-left politicians, as well as parties who have taken a harsher stance against Trump following some of his threats. In Canada, for instance, a landslide victory for the Canadian Conservatives, led by Trump-light leader Pierre Poilievre, looked pretty much inevitable until about 6 months ago. This all changed when Trump took power and began constantly threatening Canada with a trade war or annexation. Former Bank of Canada head Mark Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau, branded himself as a liberal strongman who could stand up to Trump, reviving the Liberals and even winning the country's snap elections late last month. We saw a similar story in Australia too, where Peter Dutton's coalition were on track to oust Anthony Albanese's incumbent Labour government. But after being tarnished by his association with Trump and his conspicuously Trumpian policies, a sudden swing in the polls meant that Labour actually ended up winning the country's election earlier this month, with a larger majority than they did in 2022. And finally, in Europe, the incumbent Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, leader of the centre-left Social Democrats, has had to stand up to Trump's threats of threatening Greenland, and is also currently enjoying a surge in popularity after her coalition only a few months ago fell to its worst polling level since taking office in 2022. So, to avoid falling into the same trap as right-wing Canadian and Australian parties, Europe's populist leaders have had to tread a very delicate line between putting their foot down while not being too overtly critical of the US president and risking provoking him further. This conflict has become most evident in the context of the trade war, with Trump threatening a 20% flat tariff on all EU imports to the US, in addition to the existing tariffs on automotives and metals. While right-wing populists often support protectionist economic policies, these tariffs now pose a significant threat to manufacturing industries that many European nations depend on. Marine Le Pen said that France needed to practice intelligent protectionism and claw back trade policy from Brussels to face Trump's brutal approach. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, one of few European leaders in Trump's good books, has described Trump's tariffs as a, quote, mistaken choice, and expressed hope that they could be rolled back in negotiations with the EU. In a warning sign to pro-Trump populists, Matteo Salvini originally tried to defend Trump's tariffs and said that they could be an opportunity for Italian companies, but even he has since backpedaled following a backlash. With that being said, solidarity with Trump still remains a given for a handful of populist leaders, especially in Eastern Europe, where Trump's brand remains remarkably resilient. Right-wing Eurosceptic parties have pointed the finger at Brussels' inability to reach a deal with Trump on tariffs, and have bragged about their closeness with Trump as an advantage. For example, Karol Nawrocki, the right-wing law and justice candidate for the Polish presidency, blamed the tariffs on the EU and European elites, promising that if he wins, he will directly negotiate a deal with the US. Similarly, the Hungarian foreign minister said that his government is in bilateral talks with the US, and even voted against the EU's counter-tariffs to make a point. While Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán actually praised Trump's trade war as a tactical way to extract concessions from the EU. Nonetheless, even if Trump's antagonistic attitude towards Europe complicates things for the European right, it's still clear that the continent is drifting right. Right-wing parties continue to dominate national polls, and Trump has also complicated matters for centrist and left-wing politicians like Macron and Starmer, who have been measured in their criticism of the president. Now, this is for obvious reasons, but they risk disappointing their base, who want to see them take a stronger stance against Trump. And it also kind of appears duplicitous, given that politicians like Starmer criticized Trump in his first term. In fact, we even saw the continued rise of the right last Sunday, following national elections in Portugal, Poland, and Romania. In Portugal, the far-right party Chega nearly tied with the socialists for second place. In Romania, although the nationalist right candidate experienced an unexpected defeat, his far-right party remains the country's second largest political force. While in Poland, the fact that centre-right candidate Rafał Trzaskowski only secured a narrow victory over Nawrocki, it may be much harder for Trzaskowski to win a majority, with voters from other far-right candidates likely to flock to Nawrocki. If you're engaged with complex topics like these, it's probably fair to say that you're at least somewhat interested in improving yourself through interesting, engaging online learning. If so, you'll be interested in this week's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is a learning app designed to help you understand topics from the ground up, on everything from maths to science to AI. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you actually play with concepts, a method that's proven to be 6 times more effective than just watching lecture videos. To add to this, their app is designed to help you learn wherever you are, with fun, hands-on lessons that you can do whenever you have the time. So instead of mindlessly scrolling on social media, you can get smarter in a few minutes each day. For instance, Brilliant's newly updated science course helps you make sense of our universe at entry level, from the mechanics of simple machines all the way up to black holes. The course helps you better understand the world we live in by explaining the physical principles that drive modern technology, while helping you develop your scientific intuition through visual, interactive problem solving. To try Brilliant for free, visit brilliant.org/TLDR, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description. By doing so, you'll get 20% off an annual premium subscription, and they'll know that you came from us, which really helps us out.